In March 1857, the Dred Scot v. Sandford case was one of the most controversial events preceding the American Civil War. Between 1861 and 1865, the U.S. Supreme Court issued its decision in the case of Dred Scot v. Sandford. Dred Scot was an enslaved African man, born in Virginia 1795. His original owner, Peter Blow, moved to Alabama in 1818. In 1830, Dred Scot was sold to an army surgeon, John Emerson. After purchasing Scott, Emerson took him to Fort Armstrong in Illinois. Later, the Army required him to move throughout the U.S. He did not decide to move on his own. The Army ordered Emerson to Jefferson Barracks military post, south of St. Louis, Missouri. Emerson left Scott and his wife at Fort Snelling, where he leased their services out for profit. The Dred Scot v. Sandford case was a landmark decision in 1856 on U.S. labor law and constitutional law. The case held that if a Negro whose ancestors were imported as slaves into the United States cannot become American citizens and have no standing to sue in federal court. It also meant that the government wasn't able to regulate slavery in federal territories. At first, the court denied Scott's request for freedom, then the Supreme Court ruled an act of Congress to be unconstitutional. The Chief Court Justice was Justice Roger B. Taney, a staunch supporter of slavery. The court found that no black free or slave could claim U.S. citizenship, and therefore blacks were unable to petition the court of their freedom. In December 1847, Judge Hamilton granted Scott a new trial. Emerson appealed this decision to the Supreme Court of Missouri, which affirmed the trial's court's order in 1850. In November 1852, the Missouri Supreme Court reversed the trial court's decision, holding that the Scots were still legally slaves and that they should have sued for freedom while living in a free state. The ruling had a great impact on civil rights. The Supreme Court ruling in this case was the worst in Supreme Court history. The Declaration of Independence was for the whole family, but it is too clear for dispute that the enslaved African race were not intended to be included. Scott was one of the causes for equal rights starting to be considered. This ruling seemed to be an indirect catalyst for the Civil War.